This episode is brought to you by VPP Simplified. Now you can get element by element tracking and guidance for your VPP journey. Every aspect of the VPP requirements in one easy-to-use interactive spreadsheet. Achieving VPP star status can be tough, but understanding what it takes to get there can be simplified. This VPP Gap tool will help you do that. Go to vppsimplified.com for more information.
Welcome to the Safety Pro Podcast, where we help you manage workplace safety one episode at a time. And now, your very own Safety Pro, Blaine J. Hoffman.
Welcome to another episode of the Safety Pro Podcast. In this episode, I want to address a common frustration that a lot of us in the industry have, myself included, and that is, how do we simplify the safety process in the workplace? How do we make sure that, one, our workplaces are safe, but two, management and employees are participating and supporting the safety process, and it's natural. It feels like a natural part of their job. We integrate safety, and that's going to be key. If you've listened to me for any length of time or past episodes, I harp on this a lot. How are we integrating safety into the other business processes? So I would like to talk about how we can, use lean principles. You've also heard me talk about lean manufacturing in the past, I'm sure, and we're going to talk about it again in general terms, aimed at how to integrate safety with other business processes so that it feels natural, that, we can be more efficient, and safety just happens. It's easy to adopt safety practices, a safe work culture, because it's meshing with other, initiatives and priorities that the business has. They're not competing priorities. Okay. I'm not a big fan at all of, safety as an afterthought, bolted on to the business after we've already set everything else up and running, and it has its own look, feel, its own tools, documents, processes, procedures, and then safety comes along and it just does not feel the same. It doesn't feel like we're doing, like how we do everything else. So that's kind of the focus that I want to take. It's very important, and as you do your annual planning, if it's toward the end of the year and you're looking for to the next year to say, what are we going to do? What major initiatives are we going to take? Or you're just frustrated with the apathy that folks have or may have toward safety processes, or you're struggling with getting people to adopt, some of the tools and processes that you're rolling out for safety, or you're looking to do this as a sort of a new safety professional, any of the above, right? If you're looking to make a fundamental change, think about this. Think about how we can use, lean principles to integrate safety into the other business processes so that it happens naturally. It's easy to adopt. It's comfortable but yet effective, which is at the end of the day what we are after, right? So as long as it's effective and you can manage that and you show results, that's what we're after. So sometimes, the path of least resistance, right, is sort of what we want to look at. So that's sort of the focus. I'm excited to talk about it. You can tell I get a little passionate about it, but staying true to the podcast. No platitudes, no, guru speak or sage talk. You're not going to get a keynote address here where, it's a lot of rah, rah, rah. You get done listening and you have no idea what to do first. I'm going to actually give you some tips on and some real world examples of what I'm talking about. And you're able to go back and assess your processes, procedures to see if, you have these similar situations and opportunities. Before we get into today's topic, I want to stop and talk a moment about the partners in safety that help me make this podcast happen each week. The first of which is none other than Who's on Location. Go to who'sonlocation.com to learn more about their incredible service. But I'm going to tell you right now, this service is one of the digital tools that every organization needs to consider in some way, shape, or form. It's a complete people presence management for your organization, whether it's, a local shop, one office, or a regional contractor with multiple sites, using visitors, having visitors and contractors come in and off jobs, or you're an enterprise, global enterprise with multiple manufacturing sites and remote workers. It doesn't matter. The four main applications that you're going to learn about when you go to who'sonlocation.com, one is visitor management. You could screen and track the flow of visitors, contractors, and employees through, various touch points and across multiple facilities or work sites. You could see who is due on site, view live on-site reports, and you can report on past site visitor data for increased safety, security, and compliance. You can print unique visitor badge passes, photo ID verifications, and there's even kiosk support for iPad, OS 10 and Plus, and Windows 7 Plus. So, visitor management is very important, especially at large manufacturing sites and small remote offices. You want to know who's coming and going, so that option is incredibly important. There's also contractor management. Manage attendance, hazard notice compliance, and orientation across multiple facilities. You can empower contractors to manage their own data via a secure service provider portal. Contractor data is all backed with powerful reporting and insights. You can, again, print the badges, photo verification, but they can use the mobile app as well as the kiosk support I already mentioned. Then you have employee management. You can manage employee profiles, permissions, and presence to support your site security. Everything from orientations for new employees, notifications when they sign in and out, outside regular working hours, I should say, and more. The data is backed, again, with reporting and insights. And then you have one of my favorite features, emergency management. You could track, let's say you have an evacuation of a building or part of a building, whether it's one where you're located or even remotely somewhere else. You can have an evacuation take place. You could track cleared zones, view requests for help via the app, monitor real-time evacuation progress, and more. There are also some pretty powerful post-emergency reporting to provide communication. Whether you're mustering and evacuation reports indicate you need more training, more signs, postings, things like that to aid in the evacuation process. There's some feedback that evacuees can provide via the mobile app, and that's available for iOS, Android, or Windows Phone. Look, go to who'sonlocation.com. You can sign up for a free trial, 30 days free, no credit card required, nothing to lose. Okay, so go ahead and give it a try. See how you can put this people management service to work for you at your facility today. The next incredible partner in safety is none other than the official floor marking, floor sign company of the Safety Pro podcast, Mighty Line Floor Tape. Look, there's a reason why I talk about Mighty Line. You think, oh, floor tape, right? I'm telling you right now, especially when it comes to workplace safety with walking working surfaces standards, marking aisles, delineating pedestrian traffic ways from forklift traffic, where things should or should not be stored, clearance around electrical panels, emergency eye wash showers, and, fire extinguishers. All of this stuff is important, and you want to make sure that what you do to your floors is, one, going to be compliant. It's going to, two, stand out, be visible. And three, it's going to last. You don't want to create a maintenance nightmare for yourself and having to constantly keep up with these floor markings and floor signs. Well, that's where Mighty Line Tape comes in. Now, what makes Mighty Line floor tape different from any other floor tape? Well, one, it's got a beveled edge, which increases durability for forklift traffic. Its peel and stick adhesive is easy to remove and apply. It leaves very little residue to be cleaning up. There's some videos on their website that show, and photos that show this technology. And last, it's 7 times thicker than the average floor tape. That's why it's mighty, right? It is the best floor tape available on the market. The company is growing. They just opened up another West Coast warehouse recently and distribution center. And, it's an incredible company, some great folks. Go to mightylinetape.com/podcast and check it out for yourself. It's incredible stuff. They have 5S floor markings. You can upload your own high-res logos and images to make custom floor signs for your facility. It's a great product. So again, go to mightylinetape.com/podcast. Right there on that page, you're going to have an opportunity to get a free sample sent directly to you, courtesy of our friends at Mighty Line Tape. You can also catch past episodes of our podcast right on that page as well. They host our podcast on that page. So look, go check them out. See for yourself why Mighty Line Tape is the best floor tape on the market. Okay, so let's get into the topic for this week. I was reading an article from Industry Week recently. I'll have a link to it in the show notes. And, it struck me, I've dealt with this for a long time. We've talked about it for a long time, many times on this podcast. My frustration with, safety professionals that constantly have to, force supervisors, managers, upper management, middle management, doesn't matter, CEOs, engineers, and even site workers. We have to force them to understand safety, language, lingo, jargon, and we drag them kicking and screaming to safety. And I have talked many, many times about, we need to stop doing that. Stop. I built an entire career on, this approach we're going to talk about, and it works. It works. So, what we need to do is we need to bring safety to them in the language and using tools that they understand that are comfortable for them, but achieve the ultimate goal of improving workplace safety, preventing, injuries, illnesses, and quite literally saving lives. There are many ways to get there. It's going to be based on your company culture, the organization, the industry you're in, and your availability of tools and services, software, programs, things like that. But, at the end of the day, what we want to make sure that we're achieving is that ultimate goal, right? So don't lose sight of that goal. Don't get hung up on, but I'm the safety professional and they have to understand my language. And no, you have to understand their language so that you can put safety in terms that they understand, so you can integrate safety into the business process and that they're familiar with and comfortable with, and so that it fits. It doesn't feel like an afterthought or something that got added on after we set up and, stood up the business and all of our processes from quality to, supply chain, how we track materials and flow through the plant. And then here comes safety with their handouts and posters and things that look and feel different than everything else we do. It's going to be weird. Trust me, I've been there. So how can we do this? How can we integrate safety into existing business processes? And, it meshes, right? And we kind of get this blend. So I was checking out this article, and the gentleman who wrote the article has shared an experience that he had. He worked with a company that asked them his firm to assess the effectiveness of its safety approach. So what they did is they went to many of their sites around the world, interviewed about 800 employees and 100 first-line supervisors. So one of the supervisor questions was, how much time do you spend on safety? And most of the supervisors they interviewed agreed. Now, I don't know how they checked this or referenced this or said, hey, this is sort of a perception. How do you quantify this? But they said that they spent at least 60% of their day on safety-specific activities, doing safety observations, incident investigations, trainings, completing forms, making presentations, data entry, probably getting ready for presentations and report outs and meetings. Man, that 60%, that's high. I don't know. I had questions, right? So when they presented this information to the management team, the safety professionals were apparently happy. I don't know why, but the operations folks were not real happy. So, look, if you make products or provide a service, then spending that much time on something that is not going to produce, now hear me out on this one, not going to produce your product or service seems counterintuitive, right? I mean, on paper. So that's the challenge. We know the value of safety and our effort and energy behind that. We know that if your organization has a terrible safety record and a high, risk industry, that may be, the nature of the business to have those processes set up. The question is, Does it support the production process, the business process? Do those safety activities actually support the end goal? Like, for example, if somebody says, I spend a lot of time on incident investigations, well, there are things that we can do that will help free up that time. But you're still going to have to do them. We're just not going to make it go away. You're not going to get a pass on participating in incident investigations. Stop having incidents. But how we stop having incidents is where the energy and focus needs to be. And how can we prevent injuries and illnesses, incidents along the way while we work at the same time, integrate it. That becomes the focus, and how you want to do that is important. So the article goes on to give some tips that you can use. I'm going to go throw some of my own in here as well, but there are some practices that you can engage in to improve the effectiveness and, more importantly, the efficiency of safety. The first one, integrate safety into operational and support processes. Okay, so specific examples of safety integration, right? Include the lockout tagout process on the work order or work instructions that are printed for maintenance personnel, right? This creates a more efficient and integrated work process where maintenance staff, they're less likely to forget the required safety measures. It's printed right on there. It isn't something that's also in addition to the work instructions, things that they're already looking at and working from. And then you have something else outside of that process, printed or hanging or that they'll have to then go log on to print. And it's an additional step, right? So make sure that you include it as a natural part of your work order system. So if you're using SAP, Maximo, whatever, service you have out there, make sure that you have that capability of when the work order prints out that you have the lockout tagout that also goes along with that. So what about like a job hazard analysis or a JSA? If you ask your workers or your supervisors to perform one of these, right? This is extra work time, paperwork, things like that. Integrating your job hazard analysis or job safety analysis expectations into operational standard work can make safety and that process more effective. If you look at the first of the three elements in a JHA, that's the task list, like breaking a job down into tasks, right? The task list. So this should be part of the work instruction, or a job plan, or some sort of, pre-job meeting for if you're in the construction service, contract industry. Having to determine how the work will be performed by requiring the completion of a JHA is evidence that the overall job planning process is weak. So integrate it into sort of the part of the work instructions at the beginning. You already have the work planned out. Kind of, make sure that those work instructions read like a task list that you would need for a JSA. I've seen this more often than not. Almost always. It's almost a slam dunk. I'll see a work instruction and I'll say, show me your JSA or JHA. And there are steps in there that aren't included on the work instruction, or it reads differently. But yet the work instruction is how most employees are going to be measured for productivity, efficiency, job reviews, performance evaluations, all that good stuff. So make sure that you're not coming in after the fact, writing a JSA, and it's different, okay? There's also something that we call in the industry, we call drift. This is the drift you have from standard work. Employees have adopted different ways of doing the job because of frustration. They think it's more efficient. They may be bypassing or skipping steps. You have to make sure those are included in the work instructions so that if you're enforcing standard work according to the work instructions and safety was already a part of that from the beginning, then you're achieving both. So make sure you integrate that. You don't do this JSA, JHA outside of the standard work instruction process. You should be involved. Also, integrate safety training into work process training. So if you conduct job or task-specific training and any kind of refresher training, include any required HAZCOM elements if there are chemicals in that process or at that workstation that they're going to be, dealing with, handling, or using. To cover labels, along those lines, if you notice the label's worn or missing or becoming worn, here's where you go get a new one. And, you build that into it's a part of the job. Okay. It doesn't happen outside of that process. It's a part of the job-specific process. The HAZCOM elements, by the way, like job-specific chemical hazards and protective measures. So it's going to be more specific if you do it this way to them because it's a part of their natural job. When you talk about, the first thing you do is you have to wear these gloves. It's important that you use only these gloves in this location. And here's why, because of the acetone or the IPA, or, you can make it specific to their job. So work with supervisors, other types of OJT trainers. If you use a buddy system or something like that, make sure that the checklist and the program that they follow on the job also includes the safety elements as well. Something else the author added into the article that I thought was interesting, the way it was described is make safe, using air quotes here, make safe more apparent and visual. So, and here's sort of what he says. Though it may require a safety professional to determine how to make the process safe, compliant with requirements or lower risk, it shouldn't take a safety professional to keep it safe. If you make correct safety, like expected workplace conditions, body positions, and activities, if you make correct safety visually apparent, then it will be easy for anyone to identify nonconformities. When you make the correct safety visually apparent, everyone becomes a safety leader, and here are the steps. A, define the right way, the condition, body position, etc. For example, what should the pressure gauge read when the process is healthy, right? Make sure you define the right way. B, recruit those in your organization with process knowledge and creative energy to design the visual cues for you. And I'll talk about that next after I run down these other two examples for you. C, create visual cues that make it easy to see what looks right. Provide examples such as color coding, photos, diagrams of the right condition, position, etc. Now, and remember, the goal is anyone walking by should be able to determine if that work condition or situation or area is right or wrong. And D, use people with no process and technical knowledge to check your work. I said use people that are close to the process to help create some of these visual cues and designs because they know what's expected. They design the process. Engineers, supervisors, things like that, quality folks. Work with them to make sure that, we're achieving the ultimate goal of compliance. But then you want to use people that don't have any process or technical knowledge to go check the work. Why is that important? Because of the previous tip. Make sure that the visual cues are easy to see what looks right. Anybody should be able to walk by. So how do you test this? You just do that. You grab anybody to help, go by and say, hey, if you were to look at this work area or this job setup, would you be able to determine if it's correct or not based on the visual aids or the tools that we've provided here? And they'll give you feedback. The next point, I mentioned, recruit those in your organization with process knowledge and creative energy to design the visual cues. So that brings us to this point, make the process the shortcut. Okay. Use your expert hackers, if you will, to design the process. As humans, we're going to look for quicker, easier ways to do things. I mentioned drift, right? That's how we get there. That's how we end up with a machine running with the door open so that they can quickly reach in and grab the part because they're trying to make it more efficient. It may not be compliant or safe using that, S word, but it's human nature. We know this. So how can we account for this? When safety measures become impediments or perceived impediments to production or are extra steps in the process, employees may decide to omit a step or two and create workarounds. So if you've discovered custom job aids, like tools that were made by workers and markings on operational controls that help them visually see where the knob has to be turned versus looking at the gauge, making sure that those things are in place so that they can quickly do their job. That's an indication that, shortcutting is a part of the culture, that they're customizing their tasks, their jobs to get the work done. So when you find these, it's important that, operational leaders ensure that the root reasons or root causes are identified and included in the process design or any redesign initiatives. You want to make sure you sort of stress test those to make sure that that is something that's sustainable. It achieves operational performance, safety, quality, all that good stuff, but get them involved. Make sure that they review any of those things. So to get ahead of any floor level process hacking, job aids that they've made, have these experts, the process owners, help design the process. I mean, make the process shortcut by design. Make sure that it's important. If instead of reading a gauge, if it's a dial or a visual mark that the operators need to look at quickly, then how can you design that, and still achieve your quality and safety goals, right? Look, it sounds counterintuitive, but I do this with ergonomics all the time. It's a great example. When I look for people modifying their chairs and desks and workstations to make it more comfortable for them to work, wrapping, some foam padding and duct tape around an edge of a workstation because that's where they lean to do the work, to do the data entry, and they're only leaning because it's a standing workstation or desk and they have a stool that's not adjustable. And well, we can look for those visual cues and say, hey, we could actually design your workstation to accommodate the work that you need to do in that manner. So that's what we mean by that. If they've figured out a shortcut to do their job, let's safe it up. Maybe you can make that shortcut by design, okay, and allow them to do their job. So the author of this article talks about, move people from the dark side by acknowledging their energy, capacity, creativity, and ingenuity. Include these folks in the process design or redesign teams. Give them a stake in making the process, okay? And along the way, what they'll do is they'll learn. Sometimes there's shortcuts you just can't take, but they don't understand or appreciate why. And they learn that through this natural process, okay, of process learning. It isn't you trying to force it on them as a safety professional, coming out there with your clipboard and your little armband like a hall monitor, saying, you should know better. You can't do this. So make sure that you get them involved in the process, okay? Also, provide the team with your organization's quality, operational excellence, safety, and more performance expectations, and challenge them to make the process both safer and more effective and efficient at the same time. You can validate the new approach, right? With some inexperienced employees during some challenging operational periods, but you're still going to be there along the way. Here's an example, right? If safety seems to take a back seat at the end of each month when we're trying to get more product shipped out the door, that's a good time to test any shortcut proofing of processes. If they've built that sort of rush at the end of the month into the process, they've accounted for it. We know we're going to do it, so we're going to design a way to do it quicker and more efficient, and more efficiently and safely. Then you've accounted for that. So that's what I'm talking about. Make sure that you assume that it's human nature to want to take shortcuts. Okay, just accept it. And how do we make our processes more resilient to that? Okay, and so that when somebody does take a shortcut, it's not catastrophic. It's actually designed that way. So you can use some lean approaches to this, right? You can say, 5S, for example, how we organize the workplace, everything from keeping things that I need at the point of use on hand, but also making sure that the table is labeled and marked the right way, that we've got enough room for the PPE and it's available when they need it and where they need it. Everything from the number of steps they have to take to go and do a job, to perform a task, or an op in a build process, all of that stuff, the employees can be involved in that. And that's where you as a safety professional will learn, hey, I appreciate what it is they have to do on a day-to-day basis. And I can help them make that safer and keep production moving along at the same time. You're going to be a hero, okay? Bottom line is, we're going to have safe operating procedures, and they're going to be efficient, and the quality is going to be there. So I said I'm going to give you a couple other examples and that I've come up with over the years. And here's one. I mentioned JHAs or JSAs, right? A lot of folks don't like doing these because they've already set up the job. They've already gone through the work process and the job steps and to help write those. Even HR folks have gone through setting up, because so a lot of them will do training and development, and they've gone through the work instructions with the employees, and they've set up this curriculum for training. And now you want them to go through it again. And You could have been there at the beginning with them along the way. The other problem is that it's in addition to it being an extra step, right? You weren't there at the beginning, or safety wasn't there at the beginning, and safety wasn't baked into creating the job steps or the work instruction at each task step. It also looks completely different. When you have, work instructions are usually driven by quality systems, right? And there's like a template, and the document on the monitor or the printout has a look and a feel. And then you have this JSA that's printed there as a job aid, and it looks completely different, okay, visually. So we have conflicting visual cues and looks and feel. So what I like to do is say, hey, if a JSA makes sense to have at this workstation, at this operation, so that we make sure that the right PPE is being used and a couple of safety steps are not being skipped, why doesn't it make sense to also post, these 3 quality checks that need to be performed as well? You can integrate the two. You can sort of do this layered approach. Same thing with safety inspections. When supervisors say, I've got to do a safety observation every week or once a day or a walkthrough, ask the quality team or, inventory for material control, hey, what checks are done daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, all that good stuff that you require that's going to already pull that supervisor out there on the shop floor or out to the job site, and then layer in some safety questions while they are already there, while they're doing that. Don't make it an add-on or an extra. Hey, when you're done with your quality inspection, come back and grab this sheet of paper and then go back out and do a safety observation. If I'm standing there talking to an operator and I'm doing a quality check, I'm looking at their workstation to make sure that the gauge has got the calibration sticker on it and it's sitting in its right spot. I'm also going to look at that acetone can to make sure the lid's closed if it's not in use and the label is on there, and boom, I'm done. Don't make them come back out and do it later. And make sure that supervisors understand that, they can do both of those when they're out there, and it makes it more efficient. So integrate safety into some of the things that we already have to do, and layered process audits or layered process reviews are a really great way to do that and an efficient way to do that. So keep that one in mind. Accident investigations are another one. It's a great way to get a small team together and use a lean approach, root cause analysis, right, to document sort of, and quality folks do this all the time. So use the same tools. Use an A3, 5Y, fishbone as appropriate for the event, but use the same problem-solving tools and approaches that they already use for when something happens that was unexpected or not supposed to happen. It's going to be comfortable and familiar to them, and it's going to get them involved in coming up with possible solutions. So integrating safety using lean principles is sort of, the theme of this episode, right? This is what I want you to take away, is go see how quality has managed to instill a culture of quality, high quality standards. What tools do they use? What sort of process audits are they engaged in? The supervisors and frontline managers, supervisors, leaders, and even the workers, the employees themselves, and see how can we sprinkle in along the way, as it makes sense, some safety requirements as well. And that is going to feel more natural. It's going to be easy, and you get them involved along the way. They've actually helped create it. And at the end of the day, we've got to be in compliance, minimum compliance. We have some regs and rules that we have to absolutely follow, but how we do them, that's sort of up to us, right? And it should feel natural. It should be easy. And more importantly, you shouldn't need, I'm going to talk myself out of a career here, but you shouldn't need a master's degree in occupational safety and health management to do some of this stuff. It's our job as safety professionals, to take safety to them and put it in terms and language that they understand. So we're the ultimate interpreter for them, okay? We're not trying to teach them a whole new language. We're supposed to take the language that OSHA uses and put it in language that they can understand, that's easily adopted. And that is the challenge. So look, I hope you got some good tips out of this episode. Go look at your JSAs, then look at work instructions that are hanging there. And if they're pretty much on polar opposites ends of the visual spectrum and how they read, the layout, the orientation from landscape to portrait, everything, combine those. Work to integrate safety into the other processes. Look at the inspections that the supervisors and the employees and the daily checks they have to do now and see how safety. Oh, another good tip, a maintenance check. Sometimes, operators of machinery and equipment, the maintenance has, based on the manufacturer's requirements, they have these operational checks that have to be performed daily. It's a great time to throw in the, check the interlocks that are working, make sure that the guard is in place, make sure that the e-stop is functioning, labels on controls are clear. Sprinkle those into those some of those safety requirements for machine guarding and operations and controls are sprinkled into that daily maintenance check. So that's sort of your challenge, is to go out there and see where you can make this more efficient and, easier to adopt. And that's where you're going to get the most mileage. Okay. Let me know what you think. Shoot me some tips if you have some cool hacks out there that you've been able to achieve to integrate safety into the production process in a neat and unique way. Let me know. I'd love to share that with the other listeners. Hit the link in the show notes to send me an email. Don't forget, go check out our partners in safety, who'sonlocation.com and mightylinetape.com/podcast. And until the next Safety Pro podcast episode, be safe.